Okay, we're back to the second part of the video, and we're going to add some materials to the scene now. I'm just going to keep it simple and just have two materials. So you're looking for your materials editor, and this has two versions. There is what's called the Slate material editor, which is a bit more complex to use, and really for simple architectural materials it's a bit over the top. So what we're going to use is the simpler version. Okay, so it's called the Compact Materials Editor. Okay, and I'm just going to get rid of these two because it's kind of giving the game away as to what we're going to do. Okay, so we've got a basic material being offered here. We're using the ART renderer. Okay, so this controls all the way the materials behave and how they behave with light and reflections and all that stuff. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll make this our walls material. So I'm just going to call this plaster. Okay, and we can choose a preset to start with to get us moving. So this wants to be a matte finish, so a matte paint will do. Okay, plaster isn't very shiny. Okay, let's change the material mode to advanced. All this does is just give you access to the reflections setting. Okay, because we don't want our walls to be reflective; they're not polished. Okay, let's change the base color to white just now. Okay, and a strength for the base color of 1. Okay, we can give it a bit of roughness if we want. There's lots of roughness settings that you can add in here. Each one has its own effects. So let's look at the material as we build it up. I just double clicked it here. Now, these previews are a bit kind of messy. They're grainy. Okay, it's just the way the ART renderer works. Okay, it's not fully rendering the material samples. Okay, so we don't want any reflections. We said we had none, so power of 0 for the reflections. And we'll put the roughness to 0 on that one as well. So it has no effect if there's no power to it anyway. Okay, so that would be the kind of starting point for our material. Okay, but what we want is a picture. Use a picture instead of just plain colour. Okay, so we need to tell the computer where it's going to find the pictures. So if you go to Customize, Configure User Paths, External Files. Okay, I'll take it away so we can show you adding it. Okay, External Files, we want to add, and this is where you tell it about the folder we're using for the exercise. So it's Vessel Space Modeling. Double click that. So you can see inside this folder there's some pictures of materials. There's wood for the floor, and there's a plaster Paris lookalike material that we'll use for the walls. Okay, so we want to use the path, and OK. So when it comes to rendering time, or reloading the file, it picks up the images from the right folder. Okay, so instead of basic color, we're going to add a material map instead. So I'm pushing this panel upwards till I find Generic Maps, Base Color. You click the button No Map. Okay. In this browser, click on the plus sign at Maps, plus sign at General, and then double click the first entry there, Bitmap. Okay, we need to point it to the folder we just told it about. Vessel Space Modeling. Okay, and it's the diffuse color is the general color. So this is our base color. So open that. Okay, you can see something's happening here. It's gone a different shade. Okay, but it needs to be told how it's going to place that picture on the model. Okay, so just a little bit further up, I want you to take off the tick at Use Real World Scale. And we can start to see the pattern now. It's just as kind of a mottled plaster colour. Excuse my cat, he's just arrived in the room and he's meowing. Okay, now you go back up to the parent level. Okay, we want to see the material appear on the model, so you click on this button, Show Shaded Material in Viewport. Okay, but we can add some texture to this as well. So that's the colour, so the base colour of white has been replaced by a map. That's what that little M is meaning here. Okay, so we're looking now for a bump map setting. So this is the texture. Okay, drag POP diffuse into the bump map. That saves you browsing, and copy this. Okay, something should happen here. You see it's gone a bit kind of rough looking. Okay, we want to use a slightly different version of this. It would be POP bump. So we click on the file name, click on the file name again, and swap it for the bump map. And open. Okay, it's looking a bit more textured now. Okay, watch out that you're using a tick here as well. That's gone away, so that's good. Go back up to the parent, and you can change the strength of that bump mapping. So let's change it to 0.5. Okay, this looks pretty bad here. These previews aren't great. They really need to kind of up the game with the previews. Put in a background to that window so you can check that there is no reflections. Okay, we're not seeing any of these colours appearing on the material. So close that. Okay, we now want to pick on the object that's going to receive the material. Change your filter back from cameras to all. Okay, click on the model and then assign the material. You can also drag a material if the object's big enough and easily dragged onto. You can do it that way. So we assign the material. Okay, I think my cat has brought a mouse into the house and he's trying to kill it. That's what they do. Okay, now I can't see the material showing up here because it's set on Clay Renderer. Okay, I'm going to change that to flat color. Okay, cat, you're very good at killing, I know. Okay, we've also got default shading, so I can see there's a material here. Now it doesn't know how often to repeat the picture. Okay, so what we do is we add what's called the UVW map modifier. So we're modifying the walls, drop the arrow down here to reveal this list, and you're looking near the bottom of the list for UVW map. Okay, this is basically a cubic object, so we'll use box mapping. Okay, we don't want to use real world map size. Starting to see the pattern appearing now. It's a bit faint, but it is there. If I maximise that viewport, I might be able to see it a bit clearer. You can see the speckles over here. And what we'll do is we'll repeat that pattern twice in all three directions, U, V and W. So these correspond to X, Y and Z. So let's have it repeating twice in the U, twice in the V and twice in the W. Okay, so we get a fairly small grain pattern then. Okay, let's maximise that again so we can see the rest of the model. Now we want to deal with the floor. Okay, we can use this material as the basis for the next one. So we drag it into the next slot, and I'm going to call this timber floor. Okay, the pictures that material uses will be different. So the base colour, if we change that to the light oak, let's double click that so we can see the material. go back up to the parent level. Okay, we're looking for the bump map now, to change that to the light oak bump. And open. Okay, so the two correspond now. Now the floor could be a bit shinier. If it's been a bit varnished or it's old and worn, sometimes they get a bit shiny. So we'll go back up to the standard settings, and we'll add what's called a clear coat. We don't want to make it too crazy, so 0.2 for the clear coat. You can see it's very shiny at the moment, okay, because there's no roughness. So I'm going to have 0.35 for the roughness. Okay, it looks a bit like a dull varnish now, and we can enhance that by having some reflections. So here I'm going to go for 0.2 on the reflections. Okay, you're starting to see the pattern appearing reflected onto the object. So it's subtle, but it's just enough to give it a little lift. Maybe add a bit more reflection, 0.3. Okay. Then we want to assign that to the floor. Let's just drag this one, see what happens. Just drag it onto the floor, the material goes on. Now we want to choose a size for the repetition of the timber pattern. So have a quick look at Photoshop and open a little guide I've put in here. Vessel space. Okay. Okay, let's close this one. Okay, so this is the picture that we're using for the material map. Okay, and if we said that each of these strips of wood were 125 millimeters wide, that would give us an overall size of 3,500 millimeters by 3,500 millimeters. So that's what it represents in real size. Okay. Now, if we had an idea that our cube represented a real model that was 5 meters by 5 meters by 5 meters, okay, what we want to do is get this material mapped into the model so that it represents that scale. Okay, so if the floor is 5 meters by 5 meters and the picture is 3.5 meters, then the picture represents 0.7 of the width of the space. Okay, so if the model is 200 millimeters wide, 0.7 of 200 millimeters is 140 millimeters. So that's what the mapping size should be, 140 by 140. Okay, let's see what that looks like on the model. So we've told it we want UVW mapping. Okay, planar mapping for this material. Okay, I'm not seeing much pattern showing up there yet. So let's set our size 140 by 140. Okay, I think we maybe need to switch this on. It's showing up, but I'm still not seeing the pattern there. Okay, we don't want it repeated twice, we just want it repeated once. I'm using the wrong object. That's what's going on here. Okay, sorry, let's just put that back the way it was. So it was at 2 and 2, it was box mapped, and these were 200. Well done, Archie. Okay, so I select this object first and then UVW map it. Okay, so modify UVW map. Okay, something's happening now. We've seen a pattern change. Okay, we don't want real world map size. That's not like it. We can see the picture of the timber now, and this is where we put our 140 by 140. Okay, so it's made the planks a bit smaller, but in relationship to the space, it's more in keeping with a 5 meter by 5 meter by 5 meter cube. Okay, so we're pretty much there now. That's us set the materials. We've got a camera in there, we've got lighting. We just need to then set up the renderer. So we go to the render setup. Okay, and we've told it the size already. I'm going to make it force two-sided, just to make sure it renders inside and outside of everything. Okay, and then what we need to do in the end is choose a file, somewhere to save it. Okay, so let's let it go to the desktop, and I'm going to call this render STL, and the quality level I'm going for is high. Okay, so I'm going to save this as a bitmap file. Okay, so there's no compression initially. Okay, and then click save on that. 24-bit. Yep. Okay, back in the rendering setup, we can choose how long and what quality level we want. So I said I wanted it to get to a high quality level. Okay, and I'm just going to leave it and allow it to run as long as it needs to. Okay, so I'm not going to limit the amount of time it takes to get to that high level. But this is where this render is really good. So if you only have half an hour, you can set a quality level to try and get to, but you've only got half an hour to do it. And so it might only get to medium. You don't know until you start rendering. So let's let it go, and I'll stop the video once it starts rendering. So we hit render. Okay, and we should start to see something coming through. Okay, now what we've got here is way too much light in this space. So cancel my render, close the view, close the display there, and what I need to do is check in the rendering panel, check the exposure control. So my camera is allowing too much light into it. Okay, so down here we have the exposure control. Take the tick off physical camera, because we're not using a physical camera, and we can set the exposure level. You know, there's a bit of guesswork there, but what you can do is a preview. So let's do a quick render preview and see what we're ending up with. So it should be very bright, as it was a second ago. Okay, but now you can bring this number, you can start creeping this up, and you should start to see more detail appearing. Okay, so I think it was about 9.5 that was working what I would consider to be a decent looking image. So there we go, but let's round that up to 9.5, and I can then let this render, and it should look a bit more comfortable. So let's start the render again. Okay, it has to do a little bit of preparation work, thinking about what's going on, and that's already looking much better. Okay, so we're seeing a few little bits of reflection in the floor. It's picking up the really bright spots up here and reflecting them down into the floor. So I'll add this picture into the MyDumD area so you can see what the final image look like. Okay, but this could take a very long time to render, so we're not going to sit and wait for that to happen. So I'm going to stop my video just now, but let the computer carry on rendering.